For 10,000 years, one of the most important foods on Earth was also one of the deadliest. A single root contains enough cyanide to kill a human being. And yet, 800 million people eat it every single day. How? Imagine a vegetable that looks like a harmless, dusty potato, but hides a secret as lethal as a pufferfish. It's called cassava. You might know it as yucca, manioc, or even the tiny pearls in your bubble tea. But for millions of people, it's not just a snack. It's the difference between life and death. The mystery isn't just that it's poisonous. The mystery is why humans spent over 1,000 years perfecting ways to eat it instead of just walking away. Most of the plants we domesticated were chosen because they were safe. But cassava is a plant that clearly, desperately, does not want to be eaten.
Today, we're peeling back the layers of this poisonous superfood to understand how ancient humans outsmarted one of nature's most effective chemical defense systems. Our story begins at least 4,000 years ago in the tropical heart of South America, likely in what is now Peru and Brazil. While other civilizations were building their lives around corn or wheat, people in the Amazon were looking at a woody shrub that seemed almost invincible. Cassava had a superpower. It could grow in soil so poor that other crops would wither and die. It could survive brutal droughts that turned fields to dust. Even more impressive, while insects and animals would devour a field of potatoes, they wouldn't touch the cassava. The plant was nature's ultimate backup plan, but it came with a heavy price. You see, cassava uses a two-part trigger system. Inside the plant's cells, there are molecules called cyanogenic glycosides. In a completely different room within the same cell, there are specialized enzymes. As long as the plant is sitting quietly in the ground, these two never meet. But the second a hungry animal, or a human, takes a bite, the cell walls shatter. The rooms break open. The molecules and the enzymes mix together instantly. The result is a chemical reaction that releases pure hydrogen cyanide. It's like a chemical landmine. One bite disrupts the way your cells process energy, leading to vomiting, headaches, and in high enough doses, total respiratory failure. It's a brilliant defense mechanism, but it created a 1,000-year-long puzzle for the humans who relied on it. The struggle to solve this puzzle isn't just ancient history. It's a life-or-death reality right now. Take Venezuela, for example. In 2017, during a massive food crisis, people began turning to the black market for cheap calories. There are two main types of cassava, sweet and bitter. Sweet cassava has lower levels of poison and can be made safe just by boiling it. But bitter cassava is a different beast. It can contain up to 10 times more cyanide. Because they look identical, desperate people bought bitter cassava by mistake. They boiled it like a normal potato, but that wasn't enough. At least 28 people died because they didn't know the secret code of the bitter root. But then there's an even stranger mystery from rural Africa. In some communities, a terrifying paralytic disease called konzo would suddenly appear, leaving people permanently unable to walk. Scientists realized that this only happened during severe droughts. Why? Because when the earth dries up, the cassava plant gets stressed and actually produces more poison to protect itself. But here's the mind-blown moment. Researchers found a village just 5 kilometers away from a konzo outbreak that had 0 cases. They were eating the same toxic cassava. So why were they okay? The answer was fish. The second village lived near water and had access to animal protein. It turns out our bodies need specific sulfur-based amino acids found in meat and fish to help detoxify small amounts of cyanide. The first village was starving and lacked protein, so the backup plan crop that was supposed to save them ended up being their downfall.
So, how did ancient humans figure out how to eat the bitter variety without a chemistry degree? They didn't just cook it, they engineered it. They realized that to get the poison out, they had to act like a predator. They had to destroy the plant's cells on purpose before it reached their mouths. They developed a multi-day process that feels more like a laboratory experiment than a recipe. First, they peeled the skin. Then, they grated the roots into a pulp. This forced the molecules and enzymes to mix and release the gas early. But that wasn't enough. They then used an ingenious invention, the snake basket. This long, woven tube was filled with the wet cassava pulp. When they stretched the basket, it acted like a giant press, squeezing out the toxic juices. The juice was so poisonous that some tribes used it to tip their hunting arrows, or even to catch fish by dumping it into ponds to stun them.
The most surprising reveal? They discovered that microbes were their best friends. By letting the pulp sit for several days, a process called heap fermentation, natural bacteria and molds would actually eat the remaining poison. By the time the pulp was dried into flour or toasted into grains, nearly 90% of the poison was gone. Humans had taken a lethal weapon and turned it into a shelf-stable, insect-proof flour that could last for months without rotting. It took over 1,000 years of trial, error, and likely a lot of tragedy to perfect this chemical dance. Cassava is a reminder that human survival isn't always about finding the easiest path. Sometimes it's about taking the most difficult, dangerous thing in nature and refusing to let it win.
Today, this deadly root is the third most important crop in the tropics. It's the base for everything from Brazilian crepes to West African fufu and even the boba in your tea. We didn't change the plant's poison. We just learned how to let it scream all its toxins out before we took a bite. It's a story of ultimate resilience. The plant refused to be eaten, and humans refused to go hungry. But here is a question to think about. If you were stranded on a desert island and the only food available was a plant you knew could be lethal if prepared wrong, would you trust your survival instincts enough to try and process it yourself? Or would you keep searching for something a little less bitey? Let me know in the comments if you've ever tried cassava and if you knew the secret history behind your favorite boba pearls.